Hello everybody. This is the first in a series of video lectures tied to the chapter material for Foundations of Social Thought. Let's start off with the key concepts from the introduction, Chapter 1. Chapter 1 begins on page 1 of your text, and you will need to review what a theory is, what a scientific theory is, what a social scientist. To really get us thinking about this, though, there are two matrices that we use to consider social theory that you see discussed in Chapter 1. And if you can get your mind around how these work in explaining the world, depending on each theorist, you'll have a very good head start in making sense of how these social theories explain the world or some part of the world. The first concept we need to consider is order. Maybe your introductory sociology class, you remember some discussion of micro versus macro, little versus big. This is the same idea. Take a look at this diagram as we move through the explanation. When we begin to look at social process as a theorist, are we looking through the world through the lens of the big picture? If this is our starting off point, then we are focusing on collective order. The minimum wage in the United States is set at the federal level, for example. So to our concern, we were analyzing wages and comparing men and women. Perhaps we are concerned about how much more men versus women make above the minimum wage. In comparison, we would be considering the collective order of the gendered wage structure in labor markets. You might have heard of the term social structure. This is the same concept. A social structure is a large-scale way that humans organize a collective level process to meet fundamental needs that we have as members of a society. The social structure also constrains us. We don't have complete freedom to do anything. This isn't the purge, after all. Here's an example of collective order and how it constrains us. When automobiles became the norm for transportation, and we see a critical point about 1920 when this happened, local, state, and national governments had to develop traffic rules. People started dying mainly in traffic accidents. I've posted an interesting Wikipedia link in the comments section of this YouTube video so you can get a sense of what I mean. So you're constrained by laws, and you, I, and everyone, about red lights and stop signs. You can run the red light or stop sign, of course, but there are consequences. Now, social order is also a process. The society is built through a series of personal interactions. This is an individual way that order is built from the ground up. Again, from your introductory textbook, perhaps you remember micro-level or social interaction theories. If your starting off point, for example, is to determine why people work in a minimum wage job, you might ask them about their experiences. This is a focus on human agency. Of course, most people work these jobs because there are limitations. Not enough good work, inequality in the labor market structure, inequality in education, and so forth. But if you want to explore people's individual processes and decision-making in terms of how they negotiate their everyday lives in these situations, then your consideration of order is going to begin with an examination. This individual level is also referred to as human agency. There is no right or wrong starting off point when you're considering a social process, when you're considering order. For some processes, the analysis will begin from a collective theoretical perspective. From others, an individual theoretical perspective. You're being able to identify the point of origin for a perspective will be useful in helping you to understand these theories and, more importantly, how they apply to social analysis. We need also to consider how a theorist begins an analytical perspective on social action, in addition to a collective versus individual assessment in terms of a theoretical perspective. Every analyst considers action in terms of rational versus non-rational action. Let's look at the second diagram outlining human action. You see these terms rational and non-rational here. We have to be careful. Let's begin by talking about what rational versus non-rational are not. Rational does not mean good or sane or common sense. This is a colloquial or vernacular or everyday conversational way of the use of the word rational. This is not what we're talking about at all. For a process, collective or individual, to be rational, it means for our purposes here that a social process proceeds towards an orientation, towards a goal. Goals are attained rationally by applying approaches to goal orientation. Is a goal achieved as cheaply, as quickly, and as effectively as possible? This is rationality. It is not a value judgment. If you're one of the agricultural elite in the southern United States and colonial America, the focus of the preeminent W.E.B. Du Bois, or in the first 60 years of the United States, then slavery is rational for your goals. W.E.B. Du Bois, the preeminent American sociologist and founder of the NAACP, examined rationality in his work, not read very much, The Free States and the Slave States. His goal was to critically assess the calculations that led to the institution of slavery as it evolved in the United States, to lay bare the economic processes behind institutional racism in the United States. So non-rationality, on the other hand, does not again mean crazy or bad or deluded. The term for this is irrationality, and we need to forget that term for now. Non-rationality means that the analyst is beginning from the perspective that there are cultural elements, ideals, perhaps religious ones, or a sense of national identity, for example, that impels social action. There are regions of the country where people don't smoke, for example. Tobacco, not because they are necessarily afraid of getting lung cancer, but because their religion views it as immoral. Let's look at this third diagram. This brings together the collective individual continuum overlaid with a rational, non-rational action continuum. And it forms a quadrant, sort of like your XY axis from algebra class. You can place theoretical works on this quadrant in terms of their starting off point. Theorists are not boxed off, though, and we need to be careful. Perspective is determined by what a theorist is analyzing at a specific time and why they are analyzing a social process. W.E.B. Du Bois, for example, examined the conditions behind the evolution of slavery in the United States. It would be in the collective rational quadrant, and began with this kind of an analysis. It would fall over here. He took into consideration the labor market, laws, climate, area, the economy, the amount of money being generated, etc. When he examined the way in which African Americans, in his essay Double Consciousness and the Veil, must negotiate their life worlds at the beginning of the 20th century, he would be starting off from a collective, non-rational or cultural perspective. It would fall over here, in this quadrant down here. A non-rational and rational starting assumption contingent on the research question he is asking was how he defined how you would place his work on this. For your first assignment, which is due by Sunday, August 20th at 11:59 p.m., you will construct your own explanations. Why are you going to college? That's the question. Think about your answers as if it were on a quadrant. What's a collective rational up here in this quadrant? Reason why you're going to college and taking this class. Think of yourself as being part of a large number of people who share the same characteristic, college attendees. And what is the expectation for what you, along with everyone else who goes to college, will get out of it? Then apply the same individual rationality, this quadrant over here. Again, how about the collective non-rational reason? Again, think about more than your individual reasoning for this one, and think about yourself as a part of a cohort of many people who share the same characteristic. What are the cultural expectations? Think about norms, values, beliefs about why people go to college. Then you can apply the same logic to individual non-rational reasoning and come up with perhaps your family, friends, maybe your family has a tradition of attending college. There's a normative expectation for this. As you do this, you'll be able to apply these different sorts of approaches to social analysis to your own experience. So enjoy the week, and I look forward to working with you.